In this lesson, what I want to do is spend some time talking about the Root and Branch Petition of 1640. Again, providing a greater amount of context to what eventually devolves into the English Civil War, the Root and Branch Petition, which was presented to the English Parliament on the 11th of December 1640, began escalating tensions even further between the monarchy and Parliament, and was another contributing factor which led to the English Civil War. Remember what I mentioned in an earlier video when we looked at the Bill of Attainder, that the idea of the English Civil War is that it is not just caused by one single event. It is caused by a whole host of events which breaks down the relationship between the monarchy and Parliament, and the Root and Branch Petition is just one of those many different causes of the English Civil War. As I mentioned, it was presented on the 11th of December 1640. It was signed by approximately 15,000 Londoners, and it was delivered by a crowd of 1,500 people. What did the Root and Branch Petition essentially say? Well, in a nutshell, it called for the complete abolition of the episcopal system, essentially the offices of archbishops and bishops within the Church of England. It was a religious petition focusing on the structural elements of the church in England, the Anglican Church. Now, in terms of its context, in terms of the historical context, the petition emerged during a period, of course, of quite expansive religious and political turmoil. King Charles I had attempted to enforce a sense of religious uniformity. We know this already when we looked at Laudism. Essentially, the policies of Archbishop William Laud alienated many Puritans and other reform-minded individuals. The imposition, for example, of the English Book of Common Prayer in Scotland led to the First Bishops' Wars in 1639 to 1640. This was something which strains the king's finances. The king, who is, of course, ruling on his own without the need to call Parliament since 1629, is now forced to call Parliament. This is, of course, the November Long Parliament, the November 1640 Parliament. And so the Long Parliament is called in November 1640, and the Long Parliament doesn't necessarily do what Charles wants it to do. The Long Parliament starts attacking a lot of Charles's close allies. It starts attacking a number of major policies that Charles had implemented, and essentially causes quite a lot of conflict between him and them. One such example was the Bill of Attainder, for example, which led to the execution of Thomas Wentworth. The Root and Branch Petition was presented to the king and called out a number of these grievances, specifically grievances concerning the structure of the church in a way that was particularly Catholic in nature, let's say. So what were some of these grievances? The first concerned the idea of suppression of doctrinal teaching. The petitioners contended that the bishops imposed very strict controls over the clergy, and they also suppressed the preaching of essential doctrines such as predestination, free grace, preservance, and original sin. They also suppressed the importance of things like the Sabbath, the sanctity of the Sabbath. All of these were seen as censorship and were seen as a deliberate attempt to align the church more closely with Armenian and Catholic teachings and thereby deprive congregations from the idea of Protestant instruction. They also complained about the fact that there was a moral and educational decline. The petition highlighted that there was a decline in moral and educational standards within the clergy. It criticised the proliferation of, quote, idle, lewd and dissolute ministers who lacked any kind of proper theological training and were more interested in things like ceremonial displays rather than actual pastoral care. Again, attacking the reforms implemented by people like William Laud. The Bishops were also accused of overstepping their spiritual roles by exercising what is known as temporal authority. They would also hold secular offices, they would impose arbitrary oaths, and they also conducted inquisitorial proceedings that infringed upon individual liberties. They promoted popery. The petitioners expressed alarm at the perceived resurgence of a number of Catholic practices in the church. Now, while not going out fully within this idea of Catholicism, Arminianism was a little bit too close to Catholicism. So too was Laudism as well. They cited the encouragement of popish ceremonies, for example, the publication of Armenian and Catholic literature. The increasing number of priests and Jesuits was also seen as a deliberate move towards Catholicism without explicitly saying that that's what they were doing. And so what they did was they called for the abolition of these structures. They called for the complete abolition of the episcopal system, quote, root and branch, okay, hence the name Root and Branch Petition. They advocated for church governance structure to be based solely on the word of God and free from hierarchical and ceremonial encumbrances. And so fundamentally then, the Root and Branch Petition is just one further example of significant expression of Puritan discontent with the Church in England, specifically her hierarchy and practices, and continues to play a very central role in the debates about what leads to the English Civil War, which is starting to devolve as time goes on throughout the next few years.